Hi, I am Eric,
And I'm Doug.
and this is Learn in Public with Doug and Eric, where we break down what's going on in our solo online creator businesses to help each other and hopefully you to learn a few things and be a little more successful and happier. How you doing, Doug?
Doing pretty good. I like
Yeah,
that combo of, success and whatever success looks like for you and happy, whatever happiness looks like for you.
yeah,
I like those as kind of the things to have in mind, and also just the fact that like all of us, we get to define for ourselves like what those terms kind of mean for us. So I like that.
yeah. Me too. I mean, I think that's part of the vibe that drew us to each other.
Hmm.
We're not we're definitely not like the school of hustle.
No, kind of the opposite. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. How would you define that?
Define what?
Like the opposite of the school of hustle.
Oh,
What would?
I have heard kind of like anti-hustle as a term. I
But
think the word
maybe
that
it would
came
be
come to
more.
mind for me is like, uh, well, I've identified like a walking pace as something as a just helpful phrase or framework. So I think about pace a
Sure.
lot. Sometimes I think about sustainable pace. Sometimes I think about just like a walking pace.
Hmm.
I think I like the walking pace because it's a little more, I don't know, it's kind of metaphorical, but it also like puts me in the mode of just being on kind of a leisurely walk. Sometimes I do those around the city. Sometimes I go for like a hike in the forest, which I know you get a lot of being up in the mountains.
Every day.
Um, that kind of has the vibe
I
that
like
that
that.
I have. Yeah, that feels right to me.
It's funny because, being a child of the 70s, to me, the hustle always means that dance craze that
Uh
came
huh.
around, the disco.
Yep.
Um, and every time I hear it, I always think of that song goes into my head. And I think that to me, the opposite of the hustle is like a life that feels more like considered and not just
Mm.
about success, but where success is a small part of a bigger life, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And hustle cultures just seem so much about like this, I just gotta get there. And I
Yeah.
know I spent so much of my 20s and 30s in that mindset and nearly, I mean, I had a nervous breakdown in my 20s
Mm.
when I walked away from a business that I was $50,000 in debt to, just
Mm.
because it was going to absolutely, like I was going to lose my mind if I didn't. And I was only doing it to make money because I thought, oh, if I get
Mm.
in this and make money, then I won't have to work.
Mm.
And it didn't work at all, and it was a big part, I think, of why I felt so bad. Anyway,
Yeah.
you're I'm in the hot seat this week, so you give us an update on what's going on with you.
Yeah. I'll try to tie it into maybe a little bit of the anti-hustle or kind of what the walking pace has looked like for me a little bit. It's a recurring theme for me, if folks have caught previous episodes here, is I'm still in this mode of experimentation, specifically with the work that I'm doing on YouTube, the things that I'm publishing there. And last time or kind of in the last couple of episodes, I've talked about um, one form of video being slower paced, walking pace, kind of real time, where I just hit record on the talking head camera and the overhead camera, and I sketch things out in real time, talk through them in real time. I made a handful of those videos, a, a short series of three videos in that style,
Mm-hmm.
and got through editing two of them and felt okay about them, but still not great about them. And kind of in the meantime, another approach came to mind that's more along the lines of documenting what you're doing as opposed to kind of creating something from scratch. And this is what,
Sure.
Learn in Public is often about. What we're doing here. We're documenting our conversations with each other as we explore how to kind of build this online creative business that is satisfying for us and fulfilling and financially sustainable and rewarding. So with that in mind, I kind of just got my overhead camera set up and just recorded myself while I was sketchnoting a podcast episode that I was listening to. So this was part of a challenge within Verbal to Visual, one of the kind of recurring style of events within Verbal to Visual is I'll find a podcast that looks interesting or maybe a little article or a video, and I'll encourage everyone to sketchnote. We all sketchnote that same source material.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that then during this live event where we gather, we each share our sketchnotes and talk about the ideas that we found to be most interesting from that podcast episode, and also talk about the sketchnoting process. So this was, let's see, yesterday at 9 a.m. was when that event occurred, where we were going to come together and each of us share our sketch notes. So that morning, I hadn't sketchnoted it yet, but I have this like time slot that I'm trying to make the most of. That's 5:30 a.m. to 7 a.m. 5:30 is when my wife and I wake up. She kind of takes care of the boys initially, who usually wake up around, somewhere between 6 and 6:30. 7 a.m. is when I kind of take over and get them ready for daycare, and I drop them off. But that 5:30 to 7 a.m. chunk is when I come straight down here into my office, and I want to do sketchnoting work right away. Like I want that to be like a creative time. So what I did yesterday and also this morning, the night before, I kind of just set up all my materials, got some fresh paper out, made a note of the thing that I was going to sketch note, made sure I had like space on the memory card in the camera. And then I just hit record while sketchnoting, while listening to a podcast episode, and used that as a starting point for a video that I then kind of put together. Later in the day, I kind of looked back, and as I was looking back on the sketch notes that I took, I then put my face on camera like this and kind of just talked through the highlights from the podcast episode, maybe a little bit about how I was sketchnoting. And that was a new video that I just published like about an hour ago.
Awesome.
So yeah, that's another little experiment in like YouTube video creation that feels sustainable for me, that allows me to kind of explore ideas from other people, to be sketchnoting ideas from other people, but then also capture something that is of value for other folks that are learning how to sketchnote. So that
Cool. I'm looking forward to seeing it.
yeah, that's where I'm at. I want to kind of keep trying to do that, where like, there's this cycle where like I end one work day by deciding what it is that I want to sketchnote at the start of the next work day, and I get all those materials set up. So like, there's a little bit of a continuous loop and some momentum that I hope comes with that.
Yeah, I think it also is like planting a little seed, like you're dropping it into your consciousness, and then it gets to, germinate there overnight. I think that's a great idea. I do something
thanks.
kind of like that. My morning routine is I get up around 5 o'clock and sit for at least an hour, sometimes a little longer. And then during that time, sometimes things will come to me about what I want to get done in the day. And so I sort of drop them in then. But I love this idea of doing it the night before. The only thing I really do the night before is get my coffee ready.
Hey, that's important too.
It's
I remember
important. Yes.
there was a period of time, well, this will be a little bit too much of hustle culture, where I was living in a 2-bedroom apartment with a good friend of mine. And my bedroom was also my office. And I like had one of those like small little coffee pots that had a timer on it. So I would do that where I would set the timer for the coffee pot to be something like 5 a.m. or 5:30 a.m. kind of a early time, and the coffee would start going, and that would be my alarm clock. Like that's what I would wake up to.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And then I would, have that coffee right away while I started doing some work.
Living in a tiny cabin on the days that I use my coffee maker, it's the exact same thing.
Yeah.
That's normally only when Joe's here, though. Otherwise, it's a French press.
Oh, nice. Gotcha.
So.
Really, it's not a bad way to wake up.
No, it's a good way to wake up. I do think that the way we get going at the beginning of the day can make a huge difference, especially on the hard days. Having a routine and like something that works to put us in work mode or creativity mode or whatever the mode is that, best works for you. I think if you can find a way to hit that 5 days a week and to not hit it a couple days a week.
Oh, yeah. Those days off are important.
Yeah, I mean, it really is, and my weekends, I know you're kind of the same way, are just, they're not for work. They're for letting everything germinate and for not thinking about work sometimes. Maybe I'll be like super excited about something and, dive into it on the weekend if it just feels like fun. But if it feels at all work-like, I'm gonna avoid it.
Yeah. I think that's a recipe for burnout. Like come Monday, if you don't have some sense of like being refreshed and excited to like dig back in, I think that's a sign that you might need more of a break on over the weekend.
Yeah. So
I'll throw it to you though. Yeah. What do you want to explore today?
Well, I'm curious. Have you ever done vlogging? Have you ever been a vlogger?
I tried it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny because I've also just been like, I watched a interview that Casey Neistat did on the Rich
I
Roll
was just
podcast.
going to say the same thing.
And he's getting back into like, he moved back to New York and he's putting videos out more consistently. Not the crazy like everyday schedule that he had starting in 2015 when he like super popularized and pushed forward that genre, but I was on that bandwagon. I watched him. I tried it myself, maybe for like a couple months, but gave it up pretty quickly. Why do you ask? What's
because I was actually YouTube is my new obsession. For many years I just never I was like YouTube, it's fine, but and I actually finally like upgraded to premium, and now I'm probably watching more YouTube than any other social or like even Netflix type stuff. There's just a lot of good stuff on there. And watching Casey this morning, I'm intrigued by his authenticity, his creativity, and the vibe he puts into his stuff. And I sort of like dipped my toe into something like vlogging when I started my TikTok account. It was like 3 times a week I was doing it for a while. But recently I've been kind of thinking, what's the next step with creating stuff that isn't like the podcast or Awaken Your Myth. That's more about that's the kind of stuff that's drawn people into my orbit. It's that kind of sharing. And so what I've been doing lately is I've been doing videos on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube that have been just talking to the camera for about a minute about mindfulness stuff. And usually it ends with a, go check out this video that I made, or this meditation I made this week. So it feels like it's a way to connect with people and turn them on to what I'm doing. But as I look at YouTube, I'm intrigued because it's longer form. It offers, like if I do a TikTok video, I'm pretty much looking at 30 pieces of video to do a 60-second video. It's got to be like moving every 2-second cuts, or people don't stick around. And that goes against kind of my whole vibe, really. I mean, I've found a way to make it work, but there's something about it now that feels like a struggle and I want to move away from. And as a matter of fact, the last video that I made like that performed half as well as the other ones that I do just sitting there talking. Which, makes me think that maybe that's just played out for me and for people. So I'm looking at, as I move into this new phase with adding Awaken Your Myth, what else might I want to change? Like pivot more toward YouTube, for example. Although I do still love the engagement I get on Instagram and TikTok, especially for lives. It's like a great group of people. But I'm kind of just, you're the YouTube guy out of the two of us, and I want to find a way to be more involved in YouTube and sort of treat it more like a community and less like a place where I just throw stuff against the wall. And that's kind of happening. I'm getting more comments and starting to know people who watch my videos. I like that a lot. But I'm wondering if you have any YouTube tips. I know we've talked about this a little before, but it kind of is on my mind today.
Yeah. No, and it's definitely been on my mind a lot too. And I think there's pieces of the vlogging that really connect with, I guess, my latest and ongoing experiments with YouTube of just documenting the process. Because that's a lot of what vlogging is about, is like just documenting your day. And where I think there's a lot of like flexibility within the genre of vlogging is that you can put whatever constraints you want on it. Like you don't literally have to be like filming yourself throughout the entire day. You can pick just like certain segments of your day or certain settings where you do choose to just pull out the camera and document what's going on. So I could see that, the potential for on some of your walks. And it feels like you've done this kind of naturally in some of the TikToks that I have seen in YouTube short videos where maybe it's on one of your walks where you pull out your camera and shoot some video clips, even maybe like talk to the camera about what you're thinking about. It seems like what a format you've experimented with in the past is where you you document a walk in video clips, but then it's when you're back at home where you pull them together and do kind of a voiceover narration and do the storytelling piece once you're back at home, as opposed to like talking to the camera while you're out and about. Is that an accurate description of what the process has looked like?
That's the way I've done most of it. And actually for me, that has kind of worked. I know you're like, you don't like to do editing, but I actually enjoy the editing part. Yeah. So, and I have all the equipment to kind of, knock out edits real quick and record a VO the way I like it. So I have experimented with walking and talking to the camera, and I do like mixing that in, but I think overall I'm most comfortable shooting and then putting a VO over it. I felt like what I really enjoyed was making, Angelo asked me to write down kind of what happened to me after I had that spiritual awakening or whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. And then he was like, oh, you should record that. And so I thought, well, I'll make a video. And when I made the video, I did what I do for TikTok, but I did longer shots. And I didn't like fuss about what each shot was or what each 2 seconds was. I would go 10, 20 seconds on the same thing. And it was more about the story, and the video was just sort of a pretty background. And I liked that. And it was, it ended up being about 6.5 minutes. When I put the music under it, I was like, this came out exactly like I wanted it. And so I'm sort of thinking maybe I'll do more things like that, where I write, that was maybe 500 words, just just something I wrote beforehand. Then I just shot video to put under it. Actually, yeah. I think that is what I'm just going to try next, because I just was really happy with it, and it was fun for me to make. So
nice,
good. Thank you. Thanks for that.
Yeah. Well, I feel like you kind of figured it out all on your own there, but yeah, I like the sound of that process where you have the opportunity to write down, explore in writing whatever the topic is, the story from yesterday, from the past, or a topic that you want to explore, write about it, and then decide like, okay, what do you want to shoot?
Or what could be
video.
Really fun? I'm going to be writing these original stories for the podcast. I've already written, 7 or 8 of them, and putting those to video and putting them on YouTube could be really fun as well.
Yeah.
I think ultimately, for a while anyway, my YouTube channel is just going to have to be a place where I'm throwing stuff against the wall, because I don't have like a vision for it, and I'm not, focused in that way on using it as a marketing channel and blah, blah, blah. But I do think that will come, and I do think that's valuable. I just today found this guy on YouTube called Dan Coe. Have you ever heard of him?
Okay, I don't know why this is happening, but he literally popped up just in the past couple of days in my recommended feed, and I watched a little bit of one of his videos.
Yeah, I like his approach. What
about his approach do you like?
I like that it's eclectic. I like that it matches my his feelings on work and online work and kind of what we do matches my own. But he also feels like he's ahead of where I'm at, and he's adjacent and in the same space that I'm in. And I really want to, I want to learn from him, I was just watching a couple of his videos. I'm like, oh yeah, what he says makes sense to me. I want to learn more. So I'm thinking about joining one of his groups maybe. Also, he has great landing pages.
Oh, nice. Good case studies if folks want to check that out. How do you spell his last name? Do you know?
Koe. Dan Koe. Well, I also found this guy all my things going to be mostly about YouTube. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about Awaken Your Myth. I also found this other guy on YouTube who is a Swedish, cabin life vlogger, basically. His name is Kalle, Kalle, and then I can't remember what his last name is. Anyway, he has a little podcast. He does this like, I moved to a cabin in northern Sweden. Here's what life is like kind of thing. And I love
It's a
those
whole
YouTubes.
branch of YouTube. There's like people who move to a cabin in the woods, like
Cecilia
that's a
in
genre of
Svalbard.
YouTube where like a lot of people are doing that, and it's pretty cool.
Right. And I don't want to do that. That's not, I mean, even though that is me,
like you,
that's,
right?
that's never going to be my YouTube, because that's just not what like turns me on. Yeah. But I do love watching other people's, especially like he has just buttery footage and this minimalist aesthetic, and you know, like his videos are just gorgeous to watch and perfectly created. And he has that authenticity too, you know, that really shines through. I liked his stuff so much, and he does. He's done meditations and stuff. So I sent him an email and asked him if he wanted to do a meditation for the podcast. Haven't heard back yet, but I love reaching out like that to people and going, I love your vibe. Are you interested? Can we do a thing? I mean, that's how we wound up, you know, doing this.
No,
right?
absolutely.
So yeah, I guess I learn so much when I get on YouTube about things that I like and things that I don't. It's really a place to kind of get inspired for me.
Oh yeah.
And I realized the other day, this was a few weeks ago when I was kind of setting up ThriveCart for some stuff, and that it's expensive to get templates for good landing pages, but you don't need them, because everybody who has a good landing page is a template for a good landing page. So I have made a bookmark folder in my browser, and every time I see a good landing page, I throw it into the good landing pages folder, because that is something I want to get better at. Because even as a buyer, I love a good landing page. A good landing page makes me excited about what I'm going to get. You do good landing pages, great, simple. You know, like I was excited about what I was going to get when I signed up for Verbal to Visual. You know, and yours wasn't, you know, yours aren't those crazy long ones, but still effective. You know, it worked for me. So I like seeing all the difference in the way people do it. And I still haven't landed on what my own landing page style is going to be. But I'll have to be figuring that out here soon.
Yeah.
So, Awaken Your Myth. This week, I just this morning put out my first newsletter about it.
Nice.
And it went out to the whole Listen to Sleep newsletter list, plus a new newsletter list that I have specifically for Awaken Your Myth that has almost 200 people on it in 9 days.
That's amazing.
And it's been really fun to do that, because I've been getting on Instagram and TikTok every day, doing a live for a little while, and just talking to people about it. Just being myself and saying, hey, this is what I'm doing. And taking a learn in public approach to it, saying, I want to share what I'm doing with you as I build this, so that when it's ready, it's as good as it can be. And I don't have to do a lot of edits to answer everybody's questions. And that has been so much fun. Those lives have been really fun. People are really excited. And then I made one actual video about it. And just the combination of those lives and that one video, I've gotten almost 200 people who are excited about it too. And my goal for the entire month of November was only 300. And I'll probably hit that by the beginning of next week. So.
And
that was a nice
I think I saw it too. That's that dedicated list is the join.awakenyourmyth.com link. That's just like leads you to a ConvertKit, real simple, essentially mini landing page, place for you to sign up for that newsletter.
And that's converting at because of the way I'm driving people to it, it's converting at like 26%, which is crazy for a landing page.
Yeah.
26% of the people who go sign up.
Yeah. So. Well, and I think too, like that speaks to like a relatively simple thing that I could do, that listeners and viewers could do, even like before you necessarily like have anything to share, like once you know what the thing is about,
Mm-hmm.
creating a real simple like landing page using, ConvertKit has a ton of templates that you can like start with,
Yep.
as a way to gauge interest and for opportunity for folks to follow along. Just having that as a place to like start. Yeah,
Yeah.
having this place where you can reach out to the folks who are interested and want to learn more.
Right. And I had made it like a month ago, and it was just languishing. Like I had 4 people had signed up in a month. I had a couple of links somewhere. And when I took a proactive approach to it and kind of told people what I was using it for, it made all the difference. And it invokes that whole learn in public thing that we're doing, which I think is
Hmm.
really really fun, and it's fun for the people who are doing it too.
Yeah.
So just today I sent that out, and I also like Joe, my fiance, is my copy editor, and just my basically like he gets the newsletter the night before, and I'm like, okay, babe, what does this need? And this one I had agonized about because this is my new baby, right? And I'm just like, how do I tell this story in a way that is short enough to be a newsletter, but gets the whole point across?
Hmm.
It's just like that staring at the blank page. I was happy with it, but I wasn't thrilled with it. And he had a couple of ideas that really kind of made it all come together. He told me when it was all done, I had just a picture from the mountain, like I always put in my newsletters. He's like, "Do you have?" Because it talked about this original dream I had that wound up turning into this dream, and that was a barn that I bought that on 10 acres that I wanted to turn into a house. And that wound up being pretty much of a failure. But I learned so much, And so I told that a bit about that story in the newsletter. He's like, "Do you have any pictures of the barn and like you from 20 years ago?" And I was like, "Oh, it was 10 o'clock. I'm getting ready for bed."
Right.
Like, I probably do, but I have no idea where those are. But I was like, that is a darn good idea.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I stayed up for another 45 minutes, found those pictures, and put them in the newsletter. And it really made all the difference. So I'm kind of hoping at some point that I can I can get Joe actually involved in the business, and that he can help me do the marketing and stuff, and that switch from what he's doing to that. We're kind of talking about that because I see other creators do that with their partners,
Oh, yeah.
and he's sort of interested in it, and I don't know. I think it could be really fun. But it totally worked out. It definitely worked out for us this week, and he had all the best ideas about the newsletter, which brings me to it's always good to run it by someone.
Hmm.
Even if you don't have a copy editor or whatever, give it to your spouse or your best friend or whatever. The least that will happen is they'll catch your typos. The most that will happen is they'll give you an idea like, "Hey, did you think I would have never thought about looking for a picture?" And those pictures really like made it, yeah, they made it a lot better. So that was something I learned this week.
Nice.
And
What was what was the purpose within that first newsletter? You mentioned, I mean, telling this story related to that experience with the barn and maybe a new iteration or what that led to. Was it kind of just a little bit about the concepts behind Awaken Your Myth?
yeah,
Yeah.
it was introducing it basically.
Yeah.
I had kind of talked about it in podcast episodes. I'd teased it. I'd never, this was introducing it to both lists, actually. The
Right.
new people, I sent it out to everyone. Basically the Awaken Your Myth list is a subset of the Listen to Sleep list.
Right.
And so I wanted to send something out to these 200 people who had signed up in the last 9 days or 8. Yeah. So, and I wanted to introduce the Listen to Sleep list to this new thing, because I'm going to be talking more about it, and I wanted them to know what it is.
Yeah.
So it was really difficult to boil the whole thing down in a way that got the point across, but I was happy with it in the end. And so it felt like a good beginning to the actual now, the marathon of putting it together.
Yeah.
Next step is to go and redo your building a course, sketchnoting a course.
Yeah.
Because I thought that was so good, and I definitely want to put a lot of those principles into it. And I'm also getting very excited about starting the Mighty community. I just think it's going to be a great new chapter, in not just my work life, but my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then also working on the book. I do want this to be a book. I see a time where, my dream would be to get on to be on Rich Roll's podcast. Or, be able to have a book and a thing that has, that I can talk about with people, because I love to do that. It's just a part. It's like a part of my dream. It's like a couple steps ahead, right?
Right.
So
right.
And I see that all this could lead to that. Also, the other thing I would love to be doing, sometime, but I'd like to be doing this in 2 years. I would like to be traveling to give weekend seminars and workshops on this stuff. I think that would be amazing. I would love to meet these people and hang out and, have this be a thing that changes lots of people's lives, because that's become my favorite part of the podcast. People who are just like, this changed my life. I sleep now. I didn't sleep for years, and now I sleep. Thank you. I want people to say, I didn't even know what my dreams were, and now I'm living them. That to me is absolutely the most thrilling part of what I do. So I want more of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it's great to identify the things that you're working toward, and like having this vision for what you'd like to be doing, like in a few years' time. Like having conversations with people like Rich Roll, or other podcasters that maybe are in whatever the whatever your genre of interview podcast is, which obviously there's lots of those.
Exactly.
And I feel like you're building up to all of this nicely. I mean, just to like take a step back and look and kind of this big picture of since we started having these conversations, like one of the themes that you've brought in is like, okay, how do you integrate this newish project, Awaken Your Myth, into something that already exists, that being Listen to Sleep. And there've been some trials and tribulations there a little bit in terms of like what the format looks like, and but I feel like you've done a good job of not forcing it, like introducing kind of your current audience to kind of these newer ideas around Awaken Your Myth, giving them like low pressure opportunities to follow up, and then kind of fostering that new space with this first newsletter that you sent out, and the things that you're working toward there. So it seems like you're in a good place.
Thanks, Doug.
Does it feel that way to you, like where you are right now? It does. Yeah,
it does. It really does. Because one of the things I've been consciously doing is using this process to make this process. I've been using all these pillars and seeing that they're working for me in overcoming the challenges of getting this from my head and my heart out into the world. So I'm excited about that, because this is my dream, and so I'm using I'm using the product basically.
Yeah. I
And
like that.
I'm really excited about that. And I think our conversations have definitely helped as well. And I'm looking forward to putting this all together and getting it out in the world and seeing what happens next. One other thing I wanted to mention that I don't know if it has anything to do with this or what it has anything to do with, but the last time the podcast had a big rise in listeners was last spring when I think I told you this story, when I had a viral video on TikTok that did like 7 million views. And I had a link in my profile. That video alone probably got me 150,000 followers. It was
Wow.
It was crazy. And when that video peaked and my TikTok kind of peaked and it started to die off a little after that. So much of those, I did like a 20% rise in, I don't know, it was a couple of weeks. And then it went 20% down again. And it's been level for like the last 6-9 months, which was part of what I was like trying to do these upcoming changes to the podcast. I'm like, how do I, put some energy back into this again? Well, the last 2 weeks were just like what happened last spring, but for no reason.
Really?
Yeah, the podcast is back at the
like
same level it was back then, but without the viral video. And I went and looked online to see if somebody had mentioned me, like Jennifer Aniston in an article or whatever, but nobody, nothing that I could find. And so I feel like, okay, this is good, It validates two things. One, I'm not going to make huge changes to the podcast like I was kind of thinking I was going to do, and then I had talked myself out of again. I'm definitely not going to do that, but I am going to keep heading down the road I'm heading down because it's working. And the meditations are now more popular than the stories since a few weeks ago when I told people I might be taking them away. Who knows why that happened. But I'm definitely going to start doing that. And I had this idea that they're going to all relate to Awaken Your Myth. If this content is interesting to you, you can get more of this on Awaken Your Myth, or just use it to fall asleep.
Yeah, that's a nice integration.
Well, it really kind of changed my attitude 180 degrees about doing the meditations. It didn't feel like extra work that was going to take away from Awaken Your Myth anymore. It felt like completely aligned with where I was heading and what I had already been doing that people liked. And that's all it took. Then all of a sudden I'm like, oh yeah, of course I'm not going to get rid of the meditations.
Yeah. Man, that type of alignment is like so valuable. It's so energizing. I feel like that's what I'm searching for with all my YouTube experiments. It's like, what's the creative work that I want to spend my time on that kind of is fulfilling to me energetically, that aligns with what people want to experience on that particular platform. For you, it's your Listen to Sleep podcast. It's like audio experience. For me, it's like, okay, what will work well on YouTube that also supports like that next level of engagement, which in this case for you, getting people interested in Awaken Your Myth and participating there. For me, it's getting people interested in kind of the verbal to visual membership and interacting in that space. And I like, there's ways for the kind of daily creative acts that we engage in to kind of serve those like 2 or 3 purposes of like personal fulfillment in what we're creating, or making something meaningful for listeners or viewers, and supporting that next follow-up step for people that want to explore deeper. And it just takes time to find what that is, though, right? I think
it's
that's
elusive
what we've seen
and
here.
somewhat magical
Mm-hmm.
right? Like you really, and it doesn't just, it doesn't just happen. And this is what I touched on in my newsletter too. It really, a lot of times it just involves falling flat on your face and
Mm-hmm.
failing. You got to
Yep.
try something and fail, and not be afraid to do that, because every dream, whether it becomes fulfilled or not, leads to the next one, until until you're not conscious anymore and can no longer dream. So you just got to keep going.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the value
Truth.
of community. Nothing better to keep you going than community and check-ins like this, and having people who are, in your corner to help you through those times when you're like, oh God, this
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
Thank you for being in my corner.
Oh, hey, absolutely. Back at you too. That reiterates to a thing that came up in the podcast that I listened to and sketchnoted yesterday. Was an interview with a woman named Annie Murphy Paul, who wrote a book called The Extended Mind, which is all about, like, it explores how we as human beings, all of the ways in which we think outside of the brain. I think you would dig kind of this topic, because like a lot of,
I'm gonna check that out for
early, a lot of science, learning science and early like cognitive science focused exclusively on like what's going on up here. But she talks about embodied cognition, the way like getting our full body involved is a tool it's a form of thinking. It's a way to support thinking. But another one was socially distributed cognition, the way in which relationships support our thinking. I think these conversations are an example of that. Like the community inside verbal to visual is an example of that. Awaken Your Myth will be an example of that. That
Yeah.
the ongoing relationships that you have with people is a way to support your thinking. It's a way of thinking in and of itself, which I think is pretty cool.
I think it's just for me. It's the most valuable part.
Mm-hmm.
Like the not thinking, but the stuff that just bubbles up from somewhere else. That isn't just like, I have this problem, and if I do X plus Y equals Z, that's all necessary, but it's never been the best stuff for me. It's the more inspired stuff that comes from somewhere else.
Yeah. Well, with that in mind, maybe a closing thought here is to reach out to the broader community of folks that are listening to or watching this conversation here. A request for questions or comments or suggestions for Erik or myself. We'd love to hear how these ideas are hitting you, and what questions are coming up for you as you think about the work that you do, the creative activities that you want to engage in day to day, and the additional kind of layers of financial support or engagement that maybe you hope to bring in through that creative work. So that's a call for folks listening and watching to share with us what you're thinking about and the questions that you have. And the YouTube channel is the best place to do that. Drop a comment.
Yeah.
We'd love to hear how things are going. Like, for the most part, this is, we're on episode 6. We've had a handful of comments come in, but not a ton. Mostly it's, just Erik and I exploring these ideas, but we would love to hear.
We're very niche right now.
Yeah, we're very niche. We're in that, there's another idea from the book Rework that talks about early on in any creative work and creative project, like enjoy being in the shadows. Like there's kind of this freedom in it. It's nice to kind of not have a bunch of attention, which is kind of contradictory because like you want some attention when you're doing this creative work and putting it out there. So that's what you want to build up to, but enjoy that time that you get to spend in the shadows when it is just you or you and your collaborators doing the work.
Well,
So I
one
think
of my
we're-
favorite things about this thing in particular is that it has like it's the tiniest business focused thing on my plate, and I think it's probably the same for you too, right? Like it doesn't feel like a new business venture or anything that has to perform anything other than what it does, which is
Yeah.
you and I chatting every week and putting it out there for other people who are interested. And I want to give a shout out to actually one of our watchers or viewers that I heard from in the verbal to visual community.
Oh, hey,
Alicia
nice.
hit me up in the community messaging just to say
Cool.
how much she was enjoying listening to the show or watching the show, and I just thought that was so nice. So I was like,
That's so cool.
"Yay, awesome!" So yeah, hi Alicia.
Hi back to Alicia. I think Alicia is going to be joining us within Verbal to Visual in our upcoming series about Learn in Public. That's another thing that's maybe I'll share as my call to action, and then I'll let Erik share a call to action as well. Within Verbal to Visual, starting next week, November 16th, which I guess this is going to come out. Yeah, I think the day before. We're going to do a series related to the Learn in Public course for folks that want to, share their creative work online, get the gears turning on maybe like an independent career, whatever that looks like for you. And I think Alicia might be joining us in that series.
Oh, cool. Yeah, she's an education consultant.
Yeah, she's got a lot of experience as a teacher and teacher trainer in the education setting, and she's branching out and doing her own things now too. So I'm excited to hear more about that. Erik, any specific call to action that you would like to or shout out for folks to dive deeper?
I'm gonna go CTA free today.
Hey, CTA free.
CTA free. Yeah. You know what? I'll just second your CTA and say I want to do that event next week. So I got to put that in my calendar for sure.
Awesome. Well, folks can go to learninpublic.com if they want to hear more about that and join us.
Excellent.
Cool. Look at that. All right. Well, maybe we wrap it up here, Erik. Thank you, listeners and watchers, for following along, and do let us know what you're thinking.
Yeah. All right. Take care, Doug. I'll see you next week. Bye.